I had just settled into my Saturday routine. Coffee brewing, a comforting blanket draped over my lap, and the faint sound of a true crime podcast playing in the background. It was my favorite part of the week, where I could curl up and forget about the chaos of my job. I was a graphic designer, and after a particularly exhausting week filled with deadlines, this peaceful weekend felt well-deserved. As I sipped my coffee, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and the sudden intrusion jolted me from my cozy cocoon. I set down my mug and glanced at the clock. It was just past noon, a strange hour for a delivery. Peeking through the peephole, I saw a delivery driver in the typical brown uniform, a small stack of boxes piled in his arms. His face was obscured by a cap, and he shifted nervously from foot to foot, as if he had somewhere else to be. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should open the door. Could be a mistake, or perhaps just a delivery gone awry. Curiosity got the better of me, and I finally opened the door. The driver flashed a polite smile, his eyes darting nervously. "Hi, I've got a delivery for you," he said, holding out a small unmarked package. I didn't order anything," I replied, furrowing my brow. The box was plain, with no indication of where it had come from or who had sent it. The driver shifted his weight uncomfortably, glancing down at the ground. "I know, but it's marked for your address. You just need to sign here." He produced a digital tablet, holding it out to me. I hesitated again, looking back at the box, then back at him. "Are you sure it's mine?" I asked, still skeptical. He nodded a bit too eagerly. "Yeah, it's definitely yours. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't." Something in his demeanor struck me as off. Maybe it was the way his hands trembled slightly, or how his eyes seemed to dart around, as if he were anxious to leave. Still, I signed the tablet and he handed me the package. "Thanks," I said, but he was already turning away, walking briskly down the hall. The sound of his footsteps echoed, fading into silence. I closed the door, feeling a slight unease creep up my spine as I stared at the small box resting in my hands. Felt oddly light. I shook it gently. There was no sound inside. Cautiously, I placed it on the coffee table and grabbed a pair of scissors to open it. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension as I thought about what could be inside. I sliced through the tape, peeling back the cardboard flaps. Inside, nestled in layers of packing peanuts, was a small object. I reached in, pulling it out and revealing a strange, ornate wooden box. It was beautifully carved, with intricate designs etched into its surface. I turned it over, trying to make sense of its origin, but there were no markings, no labels. As I examined the box, I felt a strange compulsion to open it. The latch clicked open easily, and I lifted the lid, anticipation bubbling inside me. But as I looked inside, my stomach dropped. There was a single photograph lying in the box, face down. I hesitated, my breath hitching in my throat. I didn't know why, but I felt like I was about to uncover something I wasn't meant to see. With trembling fingers, I flipped the photo over. My heart sank. It was a picture of me, taken from a distance, as I walked home one evening after work. My heart raced, and a cold sweat broke out across my forehead. Who had taken this? Why? The background was familiar. A street I walked down almost every day. I could see my own house peeking out in the corner of the photo, the very one I was sitting in right now. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the wooden box. Panic set in, a whirlwind of emotions spiraling out of control. I thought about the delivery driver, how he had seemed so anxious, so eager to leave. Had he been involved in this? I could feel the walls of my safe space closing in around me. I quickly grabbed my phone and called the police, my voice shaky as I explained the situation. "I received a strange package, and there's a photo of me in it. I think someone's watching me." The dispatcher assured me they would send someone over to investigate, but their tone was calm, almost dismissive. "We'll be there as soon as we can, ma'am. Can you stay in your house?" I glanced at the clock. Only a few minutes had passed since the delivery. Yes, I replied, my heart racing. I'll stay inside. After hanging up, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. I needed to think clearly. I started looking around my apartment, checking the windows and doors, making sure everything was locked tight. I didn't know what to expect, but the feeling of being watched was overwhelming. As I turned back to the box, I noticed something else inside. There was another small item buried beneath the packing peanuts. Hesitantly, I reached in and pulled it out. A small key. It was old, rusty, and heavy in my palm. What did it unlock? My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was for the box itself, but that seemed too simple. I quickly looked around the apartment, hoping there might be a lock I hadn't noticed before. A few minutes later, I heard a knock at my front door. My heart leaped into my throat, and I froze. Was it the police? Or was it someone else? I approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. 2 uniformed officers stood outside, looking serious but not alarmed. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding and opened the door, quickly ushering them inside. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice shaking. "I received this package, and there's a photo of me in it." I showed them the photo, and their expressions shifted from curiosity to concern. "Where did you get this?" one officer asked, examining the picture closely. "I don't know. It was in a box that was delivered to me today. I don't even know who sent it." They nodded, taking notes and asking questions as I explained the delivery and the driver's strange behavior. I could see the officers exchanging glances, their demeanor changing. An unsettling shift that made me uneasy. "Have you noticed anyone following you? Watching you?" one of them asked. I shook my head, but the truth was, I had felt paranoid lately, especially after receiving the photo. "I haven't seen anyone, but I don't know. I just have this feeling." The officers took the wooden box and the photo, promising to investigate. "We'll look into it," one said. "You should stay cautious and avoid being alone for a while. We'll check back soon." After they left, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. They were going to help, but what if it was too late? The thought of someone having watched me, tracked me, made my skin crawl. That night, I tried to distract myself with TV, but the anxiety gnawed at me. I kept replaying the events of the day in my head, the photo, the key, the driver. Every creak of the floorboards made me jump. Every car that passed by outside felt like a potential threat. I kept looking at the clock, waiting for the police to return with answers. By morning, I was exhausted. I had barely slept, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I desperately wanted to forget everything, but the images lingered, like shadows in my mind. I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. Maybe a change of scenery would help. I needed to get out of the house, away from the suffocating atmosphere that had taken hold. As I walked through the neighborhood, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder every few moments, scanning the streets for anyone who seemed out of place. The sun shone brightly, but it did little to lift the weight of anxiety pressing down on me. I found myself wandering toward a small park nearby, a quiet area where I often went to think. As I entered, I spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench. One of my neighbors, Mrs. Hargrove, an elderly woman who lived a few doors down. She was feeding the birds, her small bag of breadcrumbs scattering crumbs across the ground. "Morning, dear," she called, her voice warm and inviting. "You look troubled. Everything all right?" I forced a smile, but the anxiety bubbled beneath the surface. "Just a long week, I guess. Don't let it get you down. You know I'm always here if you need someone to talk to," she said, her eyes twinkling. I appreciated her kindness but felt the weight of my situation too heavy to share. "Thank you, Mrs. Hargrove," I replied before continuing my walk through the park. But as I walked further, I spotted something out of the corner of my eye. A man standing near the edge of the park, partially hidden behind a tree. He was wearing a dark hoodie, and I couldn't make out his features. My heart raced as I quickened my pace, trying to act casual while my instincts screamed at me to run. I glanced back, and to my horror, the man was now stepping into view. His eyes locked onto me. Panic surged through my veins as I turned and bolted toward the park exit. The adrenaline coursed through me, pushing me to run faster than I thought possible. When I reached the sidewalk, I didn't stop. I kept running, not daring to look back until I was safely inside my apartment. My heart pounded in my chest as I locked the door behind me. Breathing heavily, I leaned against the door, trying to calm myself down. What had just happened? Had I really seen someone following me? I tried to reason with myself, but the fear clung to me like a shroud. I grabbed my phone and called the police again, but this time my hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial the number. "I think someone is following me," I said when the dispatcher answered. "I just saw a man in the park, and he looked like he was watching me." The dispatcher took my information and promised to send an officer to check it out. I paced the apartment, glancing nervously out the window, waiting for them to arrive. Finally, a knock at the door. I opened it to find 2 officers again. They quickly assured me they would look into the situation. They asked for a description of the man, but my memory was hazy, fueled only by fear. They left to investigate, leaving me alone once more. The silence in the apartment was deafening. I returned to the wooden box, the last remnant of that eerie delivery. I picked it up, the small key still heavy in my palm, and examined it closely. What was it for? A thought struck me. What if the box itself held more secrets? With trembling fingers, I inserted the key into the small lock on the front of the box. To my surprise, it clicked open. Inside, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A hidden compartment beneath the lining. My heart raced as I gently lifted the lining, revealing a small folded piece of paper. I pulled it out, my breath quickening as I unfolded it. A new wave of dread washed over me. It was another photograph, but this one was different. It showed a series of snapshots taken outside my apartment, each one taken at various times. Me leaving for work, coming home, even just standing on my balcony. I felt sick to my stomach. Someone had been watching me. Someone had been there all along, and now they were getting bolder. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "I see you." I dropped my phone in shock, the cold reality crashing down on me. The feeling of being watched had transformed into something more sinister. I wasn't just paranoid. I was being hunted. In that moment, all I could do was stare at the photographs, the weight of my reality pressing down on me like a suffocating blanket. I was trapped in my own home, and there was nowhere left to hide. With shaking hands, I dialed 911 again, but this time I wasn't going to wait for help. I had to take control of my life. The threat was real, and I wasn't going to be a victim. "I'm leaving my apartment," I said when the dispatcher answered. "I need an escort." "Stay on the line, ma'am," she replied, her voice steady. "Help is on the way. Just stay calm." As I waited, I gathered a few essentials. A change of clothes, my laptop, and a small amount of cash. I needed to get away, even if just for a little while. I couldn't stay here, not knowing who was watching me or what they wanted. When the officers arrived, I opened the door, relief flooding through me. "I need to leave. I can't stay here any longer." They nodded, leading me down the hallway to the stairwell. As we descended the steps, I glanced around, every sense heightened. The sound of footsteps echoed ominously, and the shadows seemed to twist around me. Once outside, I felt the weight of the world pressing against my shoulders. I climbed into the back of the police cruiser, my heart pounding as the officers closed the door. "Where do you want to go?" one asked, glancing back at me. "I don't know," I admitted, tears stinging my eyes. "Just somewhere safe." As we drove away from my apartment complex, I glanced back, catching a glimpse of my home disappearing behind us. The fear still clung to me, but I felt a flicker of hope. I was leaving that nightmare behind, even if it felt like a temporary escape. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The photos, the notes, the man watching me, they would find a way to resurface. I had opened a door to a reality I couldn't ignore, and now I had to face whatever darkness lay ahead. And as the cruiser turned onto the main road, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike.